Born Francisco Guilledo, the boxer known as Pancho Villa was the first Asian to win a world championship and is considered one of the greatest flyweight fighters in history. Standing just over 5 feet tall, the Filipino sensation was a whirlwind of aggressive power, becoming a national hero and a massive star in the United States during the 1920s. In July of 1925, just days before a non-title fight against Jimmy McLennan, Villa had a wisdom tooth extracted. Despite being in excruciating pain from a resulting infection, he went through with the fight, which he lost by decision. His condition worsened, and he was diagnosed with Ludwig's angina, a severe infection of the mouth floor. He underwent surgery, but the infection had spread. On July 14, 1925, Pancho Villa died from a blood clot that had traveled to his heart. He was just 23 years old. His death at the peak of his fame shocked the boxing world. His body was transported back to the Philippines, where he was given a hero's funeral attended by tens of thousands of mourners. He is buried at the Manila North Cemetery in a plot marked by a simple but elegant statue of the young champion in his fighting pose. Guglielmo Papalia, known to the world as Willie Pep, was a boxing artist. He was the master of defense and footwork, a defensive wizard who was so elusive his opponents often ended up punching air. He famously won a round without throwing a single punch. He held the World Featherweight Championship twice, fighting an astonishing 241 professional bouts over a 26-year career. He was a charter member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and his slick style influenced generations of fighters. In his later years, Pep suffered from dementia and Alzheimer's disease, a sad fate for a man whose mind in the ring was as quick as his feet. He spent his final years in a nursing home near Rocky Hill, Connecticut. He passed away on November 23, 2006, at the age of 84. Willie Pep is buried in the Rocky Hill Veterans Cemetery in his home state of Connecticut. His government-issued headstone is simple and understated, bearing his birth name, Guglielmo Pep, along with his military service details as a veteran of the U.S. Navy and Army. It is a humble marker for a man who was pure magic inside the ropes. Henry Armstrong, nicknamed Homicide Hank, accomplished a feat that will likely never be repeated. In 1938, he held world championships in the featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight divisions simultaneously, at a time when there were only 8 weight classes in total. He was a perpetual motion machine in the ring, a relentless swarming attacker who threw an avalanche of punches from all angles. Born Henry Jackson Jr., he was a force of nature who fought an incredible 181 professional bouts. After retiring from the ring, Armstrong's life took a different turn. He struggled with alcoholism but eventually found sobriety and became an ordained Baptist minister, dedicating his later years to helping underprivileged youth. His journey from a fearsome champion to a man of peace was a remarkable one. Armstrong passed away in Los Angeles on October 22, 1988. He is buried at the Rosedale Cemetery in Los Angeles, which has since been renamed the Angeles-Rosedale Cemetery. His grave is marked by a modest, flat headstone which reads Rev. Henry Armstrong, a testament to the final and perhaps most important chapter of his incredible life. Tunney is forever linked to the man he famously defeated twice, Jack Dempsey. But the fighting Marine was a heavyweight champion and a boxing legend in his own right. In contrast to the brawling style of his era, Tunney was a cerebral, scientific boxer. He was a student of the sport who used footwork, defense, and strategy to outthink his opponents. His 2 victories over the beloved Dempsey, including the controversial long count fight in 1927, made him a household name. After retiring as the undefeated heavyweight champion, Tunney pursued a life far from the ring. He was an intellectual who befriended literary giants like George Bernard Shaw, and he became a highly successful business executive. He consciously left the world of boxing behind him. He lived a long and prosperous life, passing away from a circulatory ailment in Greenwich, Connecticut, on November 7, 1978, at the age of 81. Tunney is buried in the Long Ridge Union Cemetery in Stamford, Connecticut. His grave is marked by a simple, dignified family headstone, reflecting the quiet, private life he built for himself after his roaring days in the spotlight were over. Max Schmeling was a German heavyweight champion, whose career became entangled with the turbulent politics of the 1930s and 40s. He is best known for his 2 epic fights with Joe Louis in 1936. Schmeling handed Louis his first professional loss, a victory that was touted by the Nazi regime as proof of Aryan supremacy. 2 years later, in a politically charged rematch at Yankee Stadium, Louis demolished Schmeling in the first round, a symbolic victory for America over Nazi. Despite being used as a propaganda tool, Schmeling never joined the Nazi Party and privately defied them, famously hiding 2 Jewish children during the Kristallnacht pogrom and later helping them escape Germany. After the war, he became a successful executive for the Coca-Cola Company in Germany. He also formed a genuine lifelong friendship with his old rival, Joe Louis, providing him with financial support in his later years. Schmeling lived to be 99, passing away on February 2, 2005. He is buried in a simple grave next to his wife, Annie, in the Hollenstedt Cemetery in Lower Saxony, Germany, a quiet final resting place for a man with a complex and honorable legacy. Floyd Patterson was a champion known as much for his vulnerability and gentle nature as for his boxing skill. Trained by the legendary C.H. D'Amato, he became the youngest heavyweight champion in history in 1956 at the age of 21. He was known for his peekaboo defensive style and his lightning-fast kangaroo punch. Patterson was a quiet, introspective man, and his two devastating first-round knockout losses to the intimidating Sonny Liston took a heavy emotional toll. Yet, he displayed incredible resilience by becoming the first man in history to regain the heavyweight title after losing it. After his boxing career, he served 2 terms as the chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission. In his later years, Patterson suffered from both Alzheimer's disease and prostate cancer, gradually retreating from public life as his memory faded. He passed away at his home in New Paltz, New York, on May 11, 2006, at the age of 71. He is buried in the New Paltz Rural Cemetery. His gravesite is marked by a beautiful black granite headstone that features an etched portrait of the champion in his prime, a dignified tribute to the gentleman of boxing. The story of Billy Miske is one of the most heartbreaking and courageous in all of sports. Known as the St. Paul Thunderbolt, Miske was a top-ranked heavyweight contender from Minnesota who fought the likes of Jack Dempsey. In 1923, at the peak of his career, he was diagnosed with Bright's disease, a fatal kidney ailment, and was told he had only a short time to live. He retired from the ring, his health failing and his money dwindling. As Christmas of 1923 approached, a broken, dying Miske knew he wouldn't live to see another. Determined to give his family one last happy Christmas, he secretly arranged one final fight. Barely able to stand, he traveled to Omaha, Nebraska, and knocked out his opponent in the first round. He earned $2,400, which he brought home to his wife, telling her to buy the best Christmas presents the children had ever had. Just a few days later, on New Year's Day, 1924, Billy Miske passed away. He was 29. He is buried in Calvary Cemetery in St. Paul, Minnesota, under a family headstone that gives no hint of his final heroic act of love. Carmen Basilio was the personification of toughness. The son of an onion farmer from upstate New York, he was a relentless, brawling pressure fighter with a granite chin and incredible heart. He was known for his legendary wars in the ring, fighting with a ferocity that earned him the adoration of boxing fans. He won the world welterweight and middleweight championships, famously defeating the great Sugar Ray Robinson for the middleweight crown in 1957 in a brutal 15-round classic. Basilio was a working man's hero, a fighter who left everything he had in the ring every single time he fought. After retiring, he remained in his hometown, taught physical education at Lemoyne College, and was a longtime public relations representative for the Genesee Brewing Company. In his later years, he suffered from health complications related to his long career. He passed away from pneumonia. Carmen Basilio is buried in St. Mary's Cemetery in his beloved hometown. New York Canastota is also the home of the International Boxing Hall of Fame, ensuring that the town's favorite son will forever be remembered right where he belongs. Jake LaMotta, the Raging Bull, was a fighter whose life outside the ring was as turbulent and violent as his battles inside it. He was a former middleweight champion, best known for his incredible toughness in his 6 savage fights against his great rival, Sugar Ray Robinson. LaMotta was famous for his ability to absorb inhuman amounts of punishment, famously telling Robinson in one fight, "You never got me down." His life was a whirlwind of rage, jealousy, and self-destruction, a story immortalized by Robert De Niro in the classic 1980 film Raging Bull. After his boxing career, he worked as a stand-up comedian and actor, his personality mellowing with age. He lived a long and tumultuous life, outliving many of his contemporaries. He passed away from complications of pneumonia on September 19, 2017. Jake LaMotta was cremated. His final resting place is not a traditional grave but a niche in a mausoleum at the Caballero Rivera Woodlawn Park North Cemetery and Mausoleum in Miami, Florida. It is a quiet, a simple end for a man whose life was defined by chaos and brutal intensity. Marcel Cerdan was a beloved French boxing hero and a world middleweight champion whose life was a story of triumph and tragedy. Born in French Algeria, he became a national icon in France, celebrated for his rugged all-action style and his gentlemanly demeanor. In 1948, he won the middleweight title by defeating Tony Zale. His fame transcended sports, especially due to his very public love affair with the legendary French singer Edith Piaf in 1940. He lost his title to Jake LaMotta in a fight where he had to retire due to a torn shoulder muscle. A rematch was set for later that year. Eager to see Piaf, who was waiting for him in New York, Cerdan opted to take a flight instead of a slower steamship. On October 28, 1949, the Air France plane he was on crashed into a mountain in the Azores, killing everyone on board. Marcel Cerdan was just 33 years old. His death devastated France and left Piaf heartbroken. He is buried in the Cimetière d'Ossard in Perpignan, France, a place of pilgrimage for his legions of admirers, a tragic hero forever frozen in time. Charles "Sonny" Liston was one of the most feared and intimidating heavyweight champions in history. With his menacing glower, immense power, and criminal past, he was the man nobody wanted to fight. He demolished Floyd Patterson in the first round to win the heavyweight title in 1962 and did it again in the rematch. Then, in 1964, he lost the title to the young Cassius Clay, quitting on his stool in a shocking upset. He lost a rematch a year later to the now-named Muhammad Ali in the infamous Phantom Punch fight. Liston's life ended as mysteriously as it was lived. On January 5, 1971, he was found dead by his wife in their Las Vegas home. He had been dead for several days. The official cause was lung congestion and heart failure, but the circumstances, including the discovery of fresh needle marks on his arm and a small amount of heroin in the house, have led to endless speculation about a possible mob hit or an intentional overdose. Sonny Liston is buried in Davis Memorial Park in Las Vegas. His simple, flat grave marker is inscribed with the poignant words, "A man." For much of the 1980s, Marvelous Marvin Hagler was the undisputed and fearsome king of the middleweight division, a determined, blue-collar fighter with a bald head and a menacing scowl. Hagler was known for his iron chin, devastating power, and relentless work ethic. He felt he was constantly denied the respect he deserved, which only fueled his ferocious desire in the ring. His epic three-round war with Thomas Hitman Hearns in 1985 is widely considered one of the most exciting and brutal fights of all time. After his controversial split decision loss to Sugar Ray Leonard in 1987, a disgusted Hagler retired from boxing and never looked back, moving to Italy to become a star in action films. He always insisted he was never coming back, preserving his legacy. His death on March 13, 2021, at the age of 66, came as a shock to the boxing world. According to his wife, he passed away from natural causes at his home in New Hampshire. A private family funeral was held. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was cremated, choosing a quiet and private end, a stark contrast to the public wars he waged in the ring. Smoking Joe Frazier was a relentless, swarming force of nature, a heavyweight champion whose legacy is forever intertwined with that of his great rival, Muhammad Ali. With his signature bobbing and weaving style and a devastating left hook, Frazier was an unstoppable pressure fighter. He was the undisputed champion who handed Ali his first professional defeat in the legendary Fight of the Century in 1971. Their three epic battles, culminating in the brutal thriller in Manila, are considered the pinnacle of heavyweight boxing. Frazier was a proud working-class hero from Philadelphia, but he was often overshadowed and cruelly taunted by the charismatic Ali, leaving him with a bitterness that lasted for decades. After retiring, he ran a boxing gym in Philadelphia, training young fighters. In late 2011, he was diagnosed with liver cancer. The disease progressed rapidly, and he passed away just a few weeks later on November 7, 2011. Joe Frazier is buried at the Ivy Hill Cemetery in his adopted hometown of Philadelphia. His grave is marked by a beautiful and imposing black granite monument featuring an etched image of him as champion and a simple, powerful epitaph. Smoking Joe. William Harrison Jack Dempsey. The Manasseh Mullah was one of America's first great sports superstars. He was the heavyweight champion who defined the Roaring Twenties, a ferocious, brawling fighter whose aggressive style captivated the public. His fights were epic events that generated the first million-dollar gates in boxing history. He was a cultural icon, a rough-hewn hero from the American West who became a symbol of his era's explosive energy. After losing his title to Gene Tunney, Dempsey remained a beloved public figure. He served in the Coast Guard during World War II and later opened a successful restaurant in New York City, where for decades he graciously greeted fans, signed autographs, and posed for pictures. He was the rare fighter who became more popular after his career ended. Dempsey lived a long life, passing away from heart failure. He is buried at the Southampton Cemetery in Southampton, New York. His grave is marked by a simple, upright granite stone, a surprisingly modest final resting place for the man who was once one of the most famous and exciting figures on the planet. Born Walker Smith Jr., the man who became Sugar Ray Robinson is almost universally regarded as the greatest pound-for-pound boxer who ever lived. He was the complete package. He had speed, power, a granite chin, and near-perfect technique. He was a five-time middleweight champion and held the welterweight title for 5 years. But he was more than just a fighter. He was an icon of style. With his flashy pink Cadillac and his Harlem nightclub, he was the epitome of class and charisma outside the ring. His career spanned 3 decades, and he fought an incredible 200 professional bouts. In his later years, the cumulative effect of his long career took its toll. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and also suffered from diabetes. He spent his final years in quiet seclusion, cared for by his wife. He passed away in Culver City, California, on April 12, 1989. Sugar Ray Robinson is buried in the Inglewood Park Cemetery in Inglewood, California. His grave is marked by a simple, flat plaque, an incredibly humble memorial for the man many simply called the King of Boxing. Jack Johnson was more than a boxer. He was a revolutionary. In 1908, he became the first African American to win the World Heavyweight Championship, a feat that shattered racial barriers and enraged much of white America. Johnson was brilliant, defiant, and completely unapologetic. He flaunted his wealth, drove fast cars, and openly dated white women in an era of brutal segregation and racial violence. His very existence was an act of rebellion. The frantic search for a great white hope to dethrone him culminated in his 1910 victory over former champion James J. Jeffries. After being convicted on racially motivated charges, he fled the country, eventually losing his title in Cuba. He spent his later years in a variety of jobs, always remaining a proud and outspoken figure. On June 10, 1946, after being refused service at a diner in North Carolina, Johnson angrily sped off in his car and crashed. He died from his injuries a few hours later. Jack Johnson is buried in Graceland Cemetery in Chicago, next to his first wife, Etta. His tall, stately gravestone bears the simple inscription, Johnson. Rocco Francis Marciano, known as Rocky Marciano, holds a unique and perfect record in the annals of boxing. 49 fights, 49 wins, with 43 knockouts. He remains the only heavyweight champion to retire undefeated. He wasn't the most graceful or scientific boxer, but he was incredibly strong, possessed legendary stamina, and had a devastating right hand he called his Sutsku. He was a relentless, brawling champion who wore his opponents down before knocking them out. He won the title in 1952 and defended it 6 times before retiring in 1956 at the age of 32 to spend more time with his family. He was famously frugal, worried about losing the money he had earned. The day before his 46th birthday, Marciano was a passenger in a small private plane flying to a birthday party for him in Des Moines, Iowa. The plane encountered bad weather and, in an attempted landing at night, crashed in a cornfield near Newton, Iowa. Everyone on board was killed. Rocky Marciano is entombed in a marble crypt at the Forest Lawn Memorial Cemetery in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A tragic and sudden end for the unbeatable champion. Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, was one of the most important athletes in American history. He held the heavyweight championship for nearly 12 years, defending it a record 25 times. But his significance went far beyond the ring. In an era of deep segregation, Louis conducted himself with a quiet dignity that earned him the respect and admiration of a nation. He was a symbol of hope and pride for African Americans. His 1938 rematch victory over Germany's Max Schmeling was seen as a triumph of American democracy over Nazi ideology, making him a true national hero. After his career, Louis was plagued by financial problems and health issues. Despite it all, he remained a beloved figure. When he passed away from cardiac arrest on April 12, 1981, his family did not have the means for a funeral befitting his stature. In a final act of friendship, his old rival Max Schmeling helped cover the costs. And in a gesture of the nation's gratitude, President Ronald Reagan waived the eligibility rules, allowing Sergeant Joe Louis Barrow to be buried with full military honors in the prestigious Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. His simple government headstone marks him as a hero to his country. He was simply the greatest. Muhammad Ali was more than a 3-time heavyweight champion. He was a global icon of social change, religious freedom, and human rights. Born Cassius Clay, he shocked the world by defeating Sonny Liston, then shocked it again by announcing his conversion to the Nation of Islam. His athletic prowess, the dazzling speed, the dancing footwork, the poetic boasts was revolutionary. His decision to refuse induction into the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War on religious grounds made him one of the most polarizing and then one of the most revered figures of the 20th century. Stripped of his title, he sacrificed the prime of his career for his principles. In his later years, as he battled Parkinson's disease, his public appearances became even more powerful. The once vocal champion became a quiet, dignified symbol of peace and resilience. Most memorably when he lit the Olympic torch. Ali passed away on June 3, 2016, at the age of 74. His funeral was a global event, a multi-day celebration of his life. He is buried in Cave Hill Cemetery in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. His grave is marked by a simple granite stone, inscribed only with Ali, oriented toward the east in accordance with Islamic tradition. It is a humble, powerful monument, a place of pilgrimage for the world.